So guys, it's officially 2023 and Christmas is just a distant memory, and now that you've gotten properly acquainted with your brand new Quest 2, you've probably come to the stark revelation that, well, VR has no games. At least that's what the critics and VR detractors would like you to believe. Welcome to the simulation inside the simulation. I am Tooodamngolden, your VR Voyager, and in an effort to dispel the VR has no games narrative, today I will be counting down the top 6 games available for the Quest 2 right now. Let's go. I am gonna preface this countdown, guys, by saying that Beat Saber is not on this list, as VR's most popular game has been absolutely covered to death, and while fun in spurts, I personally am pretty indifferent to the game itself. So now that we've gotten that little tidbit out of the way, let's kick this countdown off at number 6 with Green Hell VR. This is a game that I have been spending quite a bit of time exploring recently, as Green Hell VR puts players into the role of anthropologist Jake Higgins, who upon making a return trip to the Amazonian rainforest finds himself lost and separated from his wife Mia, thus making our quest twofold, as we now must not only survive/escape the rainforest itself, but also find Mia in the process. This game sports a roughly 10-hour campaign of which sees players attempting to survive all the perils that the Amazon rainforest has to offer, whether it's things like battling the elements, nursing venomous snake bites, hunting down small animals for food, or simply the aversion of things such as starvation, dehydration, scorpions, jaguars, or simply avoiding contaminated drinking water. Guys, this game, particularly on the game's highest difficulty level, is a truly unforgiving challenge for all of my fellow survival game fans. The Quest 2 version of this game, while of course streamlined a bit when compared to its PC counterpart to account for the reduced power that the standalone Quest 2 provides, still has an amazing amount of immersion as well as excellent use of foliage and arguably the better crafting mechanics of the two versions in my opinion, with the Quest 2 version actually having players do things like simulating chopping down trees, breaking rocks, and physically placing down objects to build various shelters as well as amenities throughout the gamer's journey. And this particular mechanic alone truly does add that extra layer of immersion, as there is something that is truly gratifying about taking a stick, knocking it into the ground, and then winding your arm around 2 connection points to get them tied up and everything set up. Guys, Green Hell VR is a great experience with some interesting mechanics, and it serves as the first of 2 2022 releases on today's countdown. And number 5 on today's countdown is the Dungeons & Dragons inspired tabletop VR title Dimio, and let's just jump right into it. My favorite thing about this title is how unabashedly unashamed the folks over at Resolution Games are about the influence that D&D has had on its first foray into the realm of tabletop VR games. And honestly, just saying that phrase sounds weird to me, tabletop VR game, which is definitely something that I did not know that I needed in my life, but I 100% certainly did. In Dimio, gamers will pick from one of 4 heroes while progressing through 3 dungeons, battling enemies together, with the endgame being to defeat the end boss together, with each dungeon run being randomized, providing a different feel to each and every game, which admittedly is a tad bare bones, especially when compared to its inspiration franchise, only sporting a single-player skirmish mode and a singular primary mode called the Black Sarcophagus, which actually is pretty damn hard. However, the upcoming addition of the competitive PvP play via the new Dimio Battles mode should add some more meat to this title, which already has a solid overall game mechanics, a well-balanced, difficult yet rewarding battle system, as well as solid integration of multiplayer components, which truly is the biggest selling point of this title, as the social aspects that are currently associated with this title definitely exist for a reason. Sure, Dimio is fun, but Dimio with friends is a lot more fun. Resolution Games has publicly committed to putting out future content-driven DLCs for free, and the addition of the aforementioned Dimio battles should pump some more life into an already rewarding experience. And again, guys, if you do have a couple of friends to jump into this one with, I highly recommend it, as it really does enhance the overall gameplay experience, and Dimio is securely locked in at number 5 on today's countdown. So at number 4, we're looking at Blade and Sorcery Nomad. Guys, if you would have asked me about a year and a half ago what my personal favorite title for the Quest 2 was, I easily would have said the Warp Frog developed medieval fantasy simulation sandbox game Blade and Sorcery Nomad, as this title is a masterclass in physics simulation for the Quest 2 and provides some of the most precise swordplay that virtual reality has to offer in the process. Inspired by the likes of Skyrim, Blade and Sorcery, Nomad are one of those early VR experiences that are a must play. As of the publication of this video, there is no other VR title that quite captures the intensity of close quarter one-on-one combat quite like this title does. Whether it's the powerful sounds of steel hitting steel during close quarter combat, the fluidity of motion required to land that perfect piercing wound, or those inevitable awkward moments where you find yourself losing your weapons, the physics involved in this title are the absolute best that the Quest 2 natively has to offer. Now, I will say that for those of you who are searching for a deep and immersive story, this title currently is not that, as there is no integrated progression system available and only about 15 to 20 procedurally generated rooms available in the Greenland dungeon crawl mode, of course, which accompanies the game's 4 core arena maps, which when combined with the game's underwhelming bow and magic usage does leave a bit to be desired. However, with that being said, this fantastic swordplay involved in this game, guys, and the physics are absolutely the main attraction, especially when combined with a relatively modest $20 asking price. And honestly, you are sure to enjoy every single journey to this medieval sandbox slash fest. So the game in at number 3 is probably the single VR title that truly changed my personal perspective on what the future of VR gaming looks like. Moss is a VR adventure platformer that sees gamers guiding a young mouse named Quill through an excellently crafted variety of puzzles in a world that brings gamers down to the perspective of a mouse in a truly creative and very fluid way. Now, this is a seated VR experience with the players utilizing the touch controllers to control Quill, and I'll be honest, it took me a long time to actually come around and playing this one, as to be frank with you guys, I thought it looked cheap and cheesy with standard point and click, controls, kind of like think Republic, right? While viewing your 2D screen, but just in the headset, and combine this with the high asking price at the time, and positive reviews be damned, I really truly wasn't touching this one. And that was me doing a massive disservice to, well, me. As seeing the beautiful world of Moss unfold in front of your eyes is truly an experience to behold. Now, Moss casts the gamer as a benevolent camera figure of which our protagonist is fully aware of, known as the Reader, who guides Quill along her quest with sections of this game's diorama-style scenes, allowing for direct interaction from the player, which, alongside this title's already beautiful graphics, sound design, and animations, have shot this title way up on my personal favorite VR games list, right? Now, this, of course, is unfolded via a semi-narrated storybook, and I know it sounds kind of weird, but yeah, it's a semi-narrated storybook that opens up in a large hall of learning, complete with candles, all set to the scale of our protagonist, of course. Now, the story in Moss, admittedly, pretty forgettable, right? It's pretty short as well, clocking in around 4 to 5 hours, but it is an absolute marvel to witness everything that does unfold around you. And this game is one that I'll be talking on about more in depth in the near future, as I do have a video centered around the platforming genre in VR as a whole. So be sure to subscribe and ring that notification bell to stay up to date and catch that video as soon as it drops, which will be, hopefully in the next, few weeks here, sometime after I finished playing through Moss's sequel, Moss Book 2. But guys, Moss is an absolute fantastic title. And for those of you who may be a little skeptical about how a platformer may work in VR, I definitely recommend that you guys go check this one out. Coming in at number 2, and seemingly a direct answer to the VR detractors who claim that VR gaming is simply a bunch of hokey puzzle games and whatnot, is the sequel to Vertical Robot's 2018 smash hit, Red Matter 2. Serving as a direct continuation of the events of Red Matter 1, Red Matter 2 is a linear sci-fi puzzle game that focuses heavily on the immersion and the atmospheric aspects of the game, and boy oh boy does it deliver. Players once again will assume the role of Vagravian agent Sasha Riss, who becomes directly intertwined with Vagravia's research into red matter following the discovery of a distress signal from a friend who had long been assumed to be dead, taking players on a varied, if not semi-predictable adventure to discover the truth behind your friend's disappearance, as well as the Red Matter project itself. Leaning on its touch controller-shaped grabber tools that were first introduced in Red Matter, Vertical Robot does a top-notch job, guys, of truly immersing the gamer in the world of Red Matter 2, giving the player a sense of true control with damn near everything being interactable, kind of showcasing the beautiful physics that this game really does have to offer. And of course, this immersion is assisted by sequences of well-designed art pieces, use of lighting techniques, and the general environmental direction, and one of the best visual showcasings available for the Quest 2, if not the best, and honestly, this game should be studied by other VR developers as a lesson on how to get sharp, crisp visuals on a Quest 2. Now, with the good, of course, comes the bad, and as is the case with even the most polished of Quest 2 games, this title does tend to skew on the shorter side, as Red Matter 2 only has about a 6 to 7 hour runtime, which seems to be the current trend in VR, as it does take a lot more to create a fully fleshed out VR game as opposed to a pancake game we all know. However, it is a little bit disappointing that this isn't slightly longer. Even if we hit that 10, maybe 12-hour mark, would have scratched that itch a little bit more, because it seems like right as this game was starting to get going and all of its best ideas were starting to get put together, it just kind of abruptly ended. So that honestly, it was a little bit disappointing, if I'm going to be real with you guys. Also, the combat, while being a nice new addition to this sequel feature, leaves very much to be desired and admittedly could have been left out of the game entirely, but kudos to the boys over at Vertical Robot for attempting to do something new for their follow-up title, and for not being content with simply publishing a half-baked DLC and passing it off as a new game altogether. All in all, Red Matter 2 is an absolute masterclass on how to provide stunning visuals in a believable, immersive environment in the realm of VR gaming for the Quest 2, and I absolutely cannot wait to see the next project from the folks over at Vertical Robot. Now, before we get to number 1, let's take a look at a few honorable mentions that are great titles within themselves but did not make today's countdown. The number 1 game on today's countdown was one of the very first VR experiences of mine, and the first VR journey that really hooked me onto the medium as a whole. The Walking Dead Saints and Sinners has absolutely mastered the backpack mechanic in VR, as well as providing some of the best melee combat that the genre has to offer. In fact, in a bit of an unpopular opinion, I would even argue that they surpass that of Blade and Sorcery in terms of fluidity of motion. Players will play as the stranger in an eerie zombie-infected New Orleans setting that, in terms of immersion, is the absolute cream of the crop, with an eerie, ever-persistent fog covering the hollow and harrowing city streets and alleyways. That really does add to the fear factor of this title, a title of which has caused me to punch more than one wall on more than one occasion.
Whoa, what the fuck? You just got chopped on.
The Walking Dead Saints and Sinners is part survival horror title, part roguelite, as players will venture out into the zombie-infested New Orleans, taking the role of the tourist, where the players must scavenge different items and salvage them to make new items or weapons in this title's linear but effective crafting system. Combat in this title is highly physics-based, adding to the immersion effect to be had while playing, and in addition to the wide array of melee options players can attack from a distance with throwing weapons, bows, and of course a wide variety of long-range firearms. While the majority of this game involves sneaking around for specific items needed to reach the next destination, each level does have an area where an exile will appear who will either ask the player for supplies in exchange for materials, or hold the player at gunpoint demanding for supplies, at which point you, the gamer, will decide how to proceed from there. Boasting around a 10-hour campaign, main campaign, Saints and Sinners does have a solid cache of content, with Aftershocks and Retribution being 2 additional content increasing DLCs that really feel fleshed out and not just a lame money grab type of situation looking right over there at U2K. This game is chock full of interesting mechanics and tangents alike, guys, whether it's the physics involved with the melee combat, the variation of the 4 different types of walkers, or the ringing of the bell tower to stir the herd, which spawns a horde of rabid walkers that chase after the player. Guys, The Walking Dead Saints and Sinners truly is a frightening yet rewarding VR experience that is an absolute must-play adventure, and my number 1 game available on the Quest 2 right now. So that's just about it for today's video. All my VR enthusiasts and Quest 2 owners out there hopefully now have an idea on some great new content, or some great content that you may have missed out that you never knew existed before, right? If you did, if something in particular caught your eye, or maybe I messed up this whole entire countdown, you think I suck, and maybe I forgot something that definitely should have been there, let me know in the comments section below. I definitely look forward to hearing from you guys. Most importantly, thank you so much for watching. I am Tooodamngolden, your VR Voyager, and thank you for joining me in the simulation inside simulation.